Porter Barrow could hardly believe what he held in his hand. A crumpled receipt for 50 cents, the price he had just paid for a 3-story hotel that should have been worth thousands. The man who sold it, Cyrus Yarro, had nearly thrown the deed at him before disappearing down the dusty street like a fugitive. The deal felt more like a warning than a bargain because hotels don't sell for 50 cents. Not ever. As Porter stepped into the abandoned lobby, the air was thick with dust, yet strange signs of recent activity were impossible to ignore. Scratches on the walls that looked too fresh, furniture that had been moved around recently, and a registration book with entire pages torn out. It was as if someone had been searching desperately for something. But what? Porter's eyes were drawn to the carved surface of the reception desk. Strange markings, deliberate in design, resembled a crude map with 3 converging lines pointing to a single destination. His gaze followed the invisible path to a crooked painting on the wall. Pulling it aside revealed a patch of fresh plaster covering a cavity. His hands trembled as he chipped away, uncovering a hidden compartment deep in the wall. Inside lay an iron box, heavy and engraved with intricate symbols. He pried it open and his breath caught. Stacks of neatly wrapped bills filled the interior, so much money it made his head spin. $12 million more wealth than he had ever imagined. But beneath the stacks of money, something even more chilling awaited him. A leather-bound journal filled with names, dates, and amounts. And at the very end, written in fresh ink, was his own name, Porter Barrow, with the words "eliminate if necessary" beside it. Before he could process what this meant, the sound of footsteps creaked across the hotel's porch. Through the window, he saw a woman in a dark dress approaching with deliberate calm. She opened the door and introduced herself as Kora Winslow, insisting they needed to talk about what he had just found. Porter's blood ran cold. How could she already know? Kora Winslow stepped into the dusty lobby with the confidence of someone who knew the building better than he did, her sharp eyes immediately scanning the room and resting on the very spot where Porter had hidden the box of money. "You're wondering how I know," she said with unnerving calm, peeling off her gloves with deliberate slowness. "I've been watching this place for weeks, waiting for someone like you to come along." Porter's hand tightened around the journal now stuffed into his coat pocket. Someone like him. Kora's smile was cold as frost when she explained that the fortune Porter found was not a treasure, but bait. Her words struck him like a blow. Bait. If the money was bait, then someone was fishing, and that made him the catch. Kora traced her fingers along the same carvings Porter had discovered, explaining they were not decoration but warnings, left by the last owner who had vanished mysteriously. The truth hit hard when she revealed that the journal listed 12 men who had each stumbled across hidden caches just like this. 11 of them were dead. Porter was the 12th. His heart raced, his eyes darting toward the window where 3 riders now stood watching the hotel from the street like predators circling prey. Kora's voice sharpened as she told him that if he didn't listen carefully, he'd share the same fate. Before Porter could respond, she grabbed his arm and urged him toward the back, whispering that they had only minutes before the riders entered. As they slipped out the rear door, the sound of spurs clinking on wooden boards echoed through the hotel, signaling the hunters' arrival. Kora led him toward a small shed, but when Porter stopped and accused her of knowing far too much, her expression shifted. Cold calculation filled her eyes as she admitted the truth. She wasn't working against the riders. She was working for them. Pulling a pistol from beneath her dress, she told him the journal was the real prize. The $12 million meant little compared to what those pages held, proof of an operation that had been luring honest men to their deaths for years. The betrayal cut Porter deeper than any knife. He had believed even for a moment that she might be saving him, but now it was clear she had been leading him into a trap. She revealed the operation with unsettling calm. For years, money had been planted inside abandoned buildings to lure men exactly like Porter, good, honest men who would try to report it instead of staying quiet. Each one was silenced before he could speak, and Porter was simply the latest in line. But then, before Kora could tighten the noose around him, another voice broke through the tension. From outside the shed came slow, deliberate footsteps and a calm but commanding tone. "Kora," the voice called, "I think it's time we had that conversation about what really happened to my money." Porter's eyes widened as Cyrus Yarro, the very man who had sold him the hotel, stepped into the shed with a confidence Porter had not seen before. Gone was the desperate, nervous man from days earlier. Cyrus now carried himself like someone who owned the room. His eyes cut to Kora and he spat the words, "My business partner." Porter's stomach dropped. The man who had sold him the hotel for almost nothing was the same man who had built this deadly operation. Years of betrayal spilled into the air as Cyrus accused Kora of cutting him out of their partnership. She fired back, saying he had tried to cheat her. The truth poured out between their barbed words. For 5 years, the two of them had orchestrated this entire scheme, planting fortunes, luring men, then killing them to keep the secret buried. 47 honest men had died. Porter realized the scale of what he was trapped in. He wasn't just holding stolen money. He was holding proof of corruption and murder across 3 territories. And now, both Kora and Cyrus had reasons to eliminate him. Before the argument could reach a breaking point, the riders outside called for Kora, their heavy boots pounding closer, their shadows spilling against the shed's walls. Porter's chance for survival shrank with every second. As the pressure built, Cyrus tried to seize control, pulling a weapon and demanding Kora hand over what he called the real ledger. Porter frowned in confusion. Hadn't he already found the journal? But Cyrus clarified with venom that the book Porter had taken was only the kill list. The real ledger, still hidden, contained every detail of their operation, names of officials bribed, records of stolen funds, and every crime committed. Its value far exceeded the $12 million. Kora admitted it with cold pride, saying it held the evidence of a network stretching into the highest levels of territorial government. Porter's pulse hammered. This was bigger than he imagined, bigger than either of them could control. But the situation turned even darker when the shed door burst open. The 3 riders entered with lethal calm, their leader, a scarred man named Dutch, smirking at the tableau of guns aimed in every direction. His tone dripped with mockery as he took in the scene, calling it a family reunion. Porter quickly realized these men weren't here to support anyone, they were here to tie up loose ends. Dutch revealed that they already had the real ledger stolen from Kora's room the night before. Porter's heart sank. These men had been 2 steps ahead of everyone all along. Dutch announced that they no longer needed Kora or Cyrus. They had the ledger, they knew about the money, and they could continue the operation without its founders. Porter's mind raced. If both of them were expendable, then so was he. Thinking fast, he blurted out that the money wasn't where they thought it was. All eyes turned to him. Dutch narrowed his gaze, demanding an explanation. Porter took a gamble, claiming he had moved the money, burying it outside near the hotel where only he knew the exact spot. The shed fell silent. Porter had just bet his life on a lie, but it worked. Dutch hesitated, deciding to keep him alive a little longer. With Dutch's pistol pressed into his back, Porter led the group toward the hotel. His every step was a gamble, each second borrowed time. Inside the lobby, Porter went straight to where he had hidden the iron box behind the furniture. His hands shook as he pulled it out, flipping open the lid to reveal the fortune still stacked inside. Dutch's face darkened with fury as he realized Porter had lied about burying it outside. "I lied," Porter admitted boldly. "I figured if you thought you needed me alive, I'd have a chance to survive." Dutch raised his gun to shoot, but Porter raised his voice over the tense silence. "I wasn't wrong about one thing. You needed time for something to change." And just then the hotel doors crashed open. A territorial marshal strode in with 6 armed deputies, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to freeze. Dutch spun toward the lawmen, his carefully laid plan unraveling in an instant. The marshal explained that they had been tracking this operation for months, waiting for the right moment. The smoke rising outside, which Porter had noticed earlier, hadn't been a coincidence. It was the signal for the authorities to close in. Then came the final betrayal. The marshal revealed that Cyrus had been working with them for weeks, feeding information in exchange for clemency. Kora's face twisted with rage as Cyrus lowered his head in shame. Dutch tried to raise his weapon, but gunfire erupted before he could act. When the smoke cleared, Dutch and his 2 riders lay lifeless on the floor. Kora slumped against the wall, badly wounded, while Cyrus stood silent, the weight of his crimes finally dragging his shoulders down. Porter remained standing, still clutching the iron box that had nearly cost him his life. In the aftermath, justice was swift. Kora Winslow W. was sentenced to life imprisonment, spared the gallows only because she cooperated and revealed the full extent of the operation. Her days of deception and bloodshed were over, traded for a prison cell she would never leave. Cyrus Yarro received clemency as promised, but guilt aged him beyond his years. He took a small reward and vanished into the Northern Territories, condemned to live with the weight of 47 innocent deaths haunting him until the end of his days. As for the $12 million, it was returned to the territorial government fund from which it had been stolen. But Porter did not walk away empty-handed. His bravery and survival earned him a reward of $50,000, more money than he had ever possessed through honest means. It was enough to change his life, but not in the way the bait had intended. Porter decided to keep the hotel, pouring his reward into renovations. Fresh paint covered the walls, new furniture filled the once violent spaces, and sunlight streamed through polished windows where shadows had once stalked him. The building that had been a trap for honest men would now serve as a safe haven for travelers, transformed from a lair of corruption into a symbol of resilience and honesty. Months passed, and the ripple effects of Porter's discovery spread across the territories like wildfire. The exposure of the operation led to the removal of 32 corrupt officials, the dismantling of 17 criminal organizations, and justice for over 200 victims who had been silenced by greed and violence. The town around the hotel flourished as honest business replaced corruption. For the first time in years, merchants and workers thrived without fear of extortion. People began to view Porter not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of integrity. Some even suggested he run for office, but Porter only smiled and shook his head. He had no desire for politics, knowing how dangerous it could be. His heart belonged to the hotel, to building something honest in a world that had nearly swallowed him whole. Yet behind the reception desk, framed on the wall, hung the original deed for the building, 50 cents written clearly across the paper. It stood as both a warning and a reminder. proof that even the smallest decision could change the course of a life forever. Porter Barrow had bought a hotel for 50 cents and nearly paid for it with his life. What he truly gained was not $12 million, but the chance to expose a web of corruption and bring justice where none had been before. His courage turned a trap into triumph, a building of blood into a beacon of hope. And as travelers checked into his hotel in the years to come, few realized the walls once hid a fortune and a ledger of death. Porter kept his secret framed behind the desk, knowing his story had already spread across the territories as a legend. That honesty, even in the face of certain death, was worth more than all the money in the world. And that sometimes a 50-cent decision could change everything. If you enjoyed this incredible story of hidden fortunes, betrayal, and justice served in the untamed frontier, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more gripping stories you won't believe. Because out here, every story is bigger than life, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.